So now let's compute the p-value. The p-value uses that fdis function. Equals f, oh, let's see, what is that function? Here it's telling us we could use f dot dist. That's actually a 2010 function. But the 2007, oh, here it is. Here the 2007, oh no, that isn't it. The 2007 functions still work, and it's less typing, so let's use those. fdis, that's a compatibility thing. fdis, it says now we need the x value referring to, in this case, the MSA over MSW, the actual value of the f statistic. And so we'll say, here it is. I don't want to type it again. Separator. I put a space in. I don't need it. The degrees of freedom for the numerator for the f distribution, and we know that's c minus 1. That's just 1. Put that in. Separator. And degrees of freedom for the denominator, which we know is 8. And now if I just tab out of there, I get the p-value, just a little bit above 1% as we saw it before. Let's compute the sample 1 standard deviation and then the sample 2 standard deviation, and we'll put those values in this cell and this cell. So starting with the sample 1 standard deviation, this will be a formula equals standard. Excel's reminding us I'm going to just use the formula without the dot because it'll give us the same result. The standard deviation, it says number 1, number 2. In other words, it's asking for the cash register receipts, so I'm going to just highlight those. And Excel knows now I'm looking for the standard deviation of the numbers which are in B2 through B6. I need the closing parent, and then I can tab out of there, and I get the standard deviation, as you might remember it, to be 10.1 something. I ought to be able to just move this formula over by dragging this cell over one and get the standard deviation for the store 2 cash register receipts. And if I want to check the formula, I can look up here, and it says now you're taking the standard deviation of C2 through C6, C2 through C6, and that's what I was trying to do. So that's the appropriate standard deviation. That's for that working rule, for example, if you use Excel to get that. Let's make a scatter plot of the 2 sets of cash register receipts. I've kind of set this up ahead of time. Here's store, and we've got store 1, store 1. There's 5 cash register receipts in our sample that come from store 1 and 5 from store 2. So what's going to happen is I'm going to use this as an x-axis value. So everything I put over here in this column next to the 1s will be plotted above the 1s, and everything I put over here next to the 2s will be plotted above the 2s. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the store 1 cash register receipts and paste them down here. And then the store 2 cash register receipts and paste them down here. And I'm ready to produce my scatter plot. What I'm going to do to produce the scatter plot is I'm simply going to highlight all the X and the Y values in these columns. The column on the right will be interpreted by Excel as the X column, the horizontal axis column, and the column on the right will be interpreted by Excel as the vertical axis numbers. So XY data. We go up to Insert. We're going to put a scatter plot in there. We're going to pick the kind of scatter plot we want. We just want these dots here. And there's the scatter plot. That's not near pretty enough. I'll just work with it down here for the time being. So I'm going to make some changes on this scatter plot. The first thing is I'm going to get rid of this what do you call that? Let me go over here to layout so I can get rid of it. I'm going to get rid of the legend. I get rid of the legend by clicking on the drop down box and just telling Excel I don't want one. None. These horizontal grid lines aren't doing much. I'm in the layout function yet. That's where I do most of the changes. So I find grid lines there. I'm going to go over here to horizontal grid lines and a little box comes up. I'm going to click on none. The grid lines are gone. Now I really just want a 1 down here and a 2 down here, but frankly there's no really good way to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of the labels on the x-axis, and I'm also going to get rid of these little tick marks going across there, and I'm going to put in a text box here that'll say store 1 and a text box here which says store 2. A matter of fact, I think I'm going to put this vertical axis through the what would be here as 0.5, just kind of move everything over to the left a little bit. So let's start moving that around. Going up here to layout, looking for axes. I'm going to make some changes on the horizontal axis. So clicking on the little arrow here in axes, primary horizontal axis. If I didn't want any axis at all, I could click here, and there's none of these options that I want. I want to go to more primary horizontal axis options. Click on that, and I'm going to get a whole bunch of things I can do here. Here's what I want to do. I'm actually going to start the x-axis at 0.5. So what I'm going to really be doing is just moving that whole x-axis over so the vertical axis goes through the horizontal axis at x equals 0.5. So let's see. The minimum value, instead of as it's fixed at 0, I'm going to just put in 0.5. And I'll leave the maximum value where it is at 2.5. I probably wouldn't have to fix it, but just so something automatically doesn't change it, I'm going to fix it there. And see, what I've done is I've sort of lined these up a little differently on the picture. The major tick marks are currently outside. That's these little things outside the axis, outside the first quadrant plot. I'm going to get rid of them completely. I'm going to get rid of those major tick marks completely by simply clicking none. And when I get out of here, you'll see you won't have those tick marks there. Oh, they've already gone away. I don't have any minor tick marks set, so there's nothing to get rid of. Now the axis labels refer to these numbers down here, so let's get rid of them for right now. So this is the sample 1 numbers, and these are the sample 2 numbers. I'm going to move this around a little bit. I mean, eventually I'm going to be bringing this up a little more so I can put text box under here. Right here I'll put a store 1, and here I'll put a store 2. That's probably up a little further than it has to be. And I'd like to string these out a little more. Now, I could string it out a little bit by bringing this up a bit. But probably a reasonable way to string it out is just moving this 60 down along the horizontal axis. Start things at 60 and go up here to 120. Start things at 60 and go up to 120. That'll spread those dots out a bit. So We're going to be working with the vertical axis, so back up here to axes. What have I got there? Let's close that. So changes have already been made. Primary vertical axis. I want to go to the more primary vertical axis options box again. I want the minimum value here not to be 0, but at 60. And 120 is okay for the maximum value. Major units still can be in the 20s. We'll fix that. There we go. Still have that in the 20s. I don't care about the minor unit because we're not displaying anything about it. The major unit tick marks can be outside. That's fine. I wanted to display that. These are actually dollars for cash register receipts. So let's go over here to numbers and see if we can change them in the currency. Now, these numbers will be displayed as indicated over here with a dollar sign, but I want to get rid of the 2 decimal places. I don't need the cents there, so I'm going to just change that to 0 by highlighting it and selecting 0. So now when I close that up, I just have a vertical axis starting at $60 cash register receipt and going up to $120 cash register receipt. And I haven't lost any of the cash register receipts in that process. Let me move this over just a little bit. I'd feel more comfortable with that. Let's go ahead and put the text boxes down here. Let's see. We're in layout, text boxes. There's a text box. And now I got a little arrow there saying wherever I click, I'll get a text box. So I'll click right there, and there's my text box, which I can size as I wish it. I'll just bring it down here. I just want that to be a little bit under the axis. And I won't need all that room, but let's get that nuts. There it is. I knew it was down there. Okay, let's get something in there before I mess with it anymore so I can see where it is. I was just clicking around there until I could find it. Store 1. Now, it doesn't matter much. If I accidentally click on something, I'll still be able to see where that text box is. I can put the store 1. If I line this vertical line up with those dots, I'm in pretty good shape. So that indicates the store 1 dots are above there. And I'll tell you, I'm just going to copy that store 1 text box. And when I go ahead and ask for a paste, that text box will go up here, which I'll just drag down here under the store 2. But of course, I want that to be store 2. There we go.